If you ever find an old cassette tape in a dead person's house, do not press play. Not even once. Be some voices wait for you to listen, and then they learn your name. My name is Sarah. I am 20 and 3 months ago, I found my mother's voice trapped inside a plastic box the size of my palm. For now. Please, just listen to the whole thing before you decide I'm crazy. By the end, I thank you. Part 1. The empty house. My mother died in March. Cancer. Slow, then fast, the way the doctors always warn you it will be. I was with her at the end, holding her last words to me were soft, almost a whisper. She said, "Sarah, don't listen to anything that sounds like me if I'm not really there."
I thought it was the medicine talking. She was on so much morphine by then. Her mind wandered. She said strange things all week, about shadows in the corner, about a man standing by the window. I held my mother's hand and told her she was safe, that I was there, that nothing could hurt her. I still don't, not fully. But I understand enough now to be afraid. After the funeral, it fell on me to clean out her house. I'm an only child. My father left when everything smelled like her perfume, like old paper, like dust settling on furniture that hadn't been closed to donate. Furniture to sell. Photographs to keep. It was slow, heavy work, the kind that makes your chest hurt even when your hands are just folding S. On the 5th day, I went up into the attic. I hadn't been up there since I was a kid. Maybe 10-year boxes were stacked everywhere, some so old the cardboard had gone soft and brown at the corners. The old baby clothes folded so small they looked like they belonged to a doll. Photo albums with a box of my father's old vinyl records, which surprised me. I thought she'd thrown out everything. It was old, dark wood, with a little brass clasp gone green with age. It wasn't locked. Inside, sit just a plain black cassette, the kind you'd find in a bargain bin at a thrift store. But it wasn't the velvet underneath. It hadn't even flattened the way old velvet does. It looked like the tape had something told me my mother had touched this last, that her fingers had been the last fingers on it. Part 2. The first time I pressed play, I didn't have a cassette player. Nobody does anymore. So I drove to 3 different thrift stores before I found an old boombox, dusty and covered, and Stick the man at the counter tested it for me. And it worked, the wheels turning with a soft mechanical whoo. That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment with the boombox in front of me. The tape already low, I pressed play. At first, there was only static, the hiss of old tape running through old machinery, warm. Exactly as I remembered it, down to the small catch she always had in her throat when she was "I'm sorry. I wanted more time. I always wanted more time with you." I started crying immediately. The voice continued, talking about small things, how proud she was of me, how she remembered the day it felt like being wrapped in a blanket that had just come out of the dryer, warm all the way through. I sat there in the dark for a long time afterward, holding the boombox like it was a living thing, or each time, it felt like a hug from beyond the grave. I fell asleep on the floor of my living room. Why? Part 3. Something is different the next evening. I wanted to hear her voice again. I made tea. But something was wrong. "Sarah," the voice said, "my sweet girl, did you sleep well last night? You always used to toss and turn when you were anxious about something." I could always tell, even but more than that, the tape from a night before hadn't mentioned anything about sleep at all. I told myself I was misremembering. Grief does strange things to memory. Maybe I'd just forgotten. "I know you found the wooden box in the attic." I know you drove to 3 stores looking for something. I hadn't thought about it in 20 years. Hadn't thought about it since it happened, actually, and my hands went cold. The tape clicked off again, exactly 10 minutes in, same as before, the click so. Part 4. I try to explain it away in the morning. Sunlight helps. It always does. Fear that feels I told myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe the tape had multiple tracks and the PLA nobody could record onto an old cassette tape and place it inside a sealed box in an attic that had Denise sounded confused. She said my mother hadn't mentioned anything like that, not once, and Basid. That should have scared me more than it did. Instead, some strange, hopeful part of me wanted a bell. I went to the library and looked through old newspaper archives for our town, searching for anything no cause of death was listed. The article ended abruptly, as if the reporter had been told to stop at old towns of old tragedies, dozens of them, buried in every issue of every dead newspaper. But IW. Part 4.5. The house on Larkspur Street before that, though curiosity got the better of it, looked ordinary. Sad, maybe the way old houses look when nobody has loved them in a long time. An old man was raking leaves next door, moving slowly. The way people move when their bodies have SD, he stopped raking. He looked at me for a long moment, the way you look at someone when you're Dakiti. His name was Walter, and he told me he'd lived on that street his whole life, 71 years, and back and forth. Except there wasn't ever anybody else in that house with her. Not after her husband. She stopped going to school, he said. Then Eleanor was gone. Found her in the kitchen one morning, relatives from out of state. I never saw her again after that, and neither did anybody else on this. Part 5. The voice learns my name. That night's recording started the same way. Static, then her VO. There was no way it could know about the phone call. No possible way, unless it was somehow inside him. Didn't you want one more conversation with your mother? Didn't you pray for it some nights after I know you didn't visit me as much as you wanted people to think those last 2 months. I know you. That was too much. I reached for the stop button, my hand hesitating over it for one long. Terrible, I sat there panting in the dark, my heart slamming against my ribs. The things it said, there were things I had never told a living soul, things I was ashamed of, things I'd buried so deep, this was something else, wearing her voice like a mask, something that had access to the inside of my. Part 6. It comes back 3 days later. I open my apartment door to leave for work, and the garb same bag. Same 3 knots. Inside, the boombox and the tape completely undamaged, like nothing I should have driven 2 hours out of town and left it in a dumpster behind a stranger's business. It's like this had already happened before to someone else, and the ending was already written. I would wake up and find the bathroom mirror slightly fogged, like someone had just taken a hot show. Mine is dark brown, no gray at all, not a 26. Another night, I woke at exactly 3:17 and just the smell, fading slowly, like she had walked through the room seconds before I opened my eyes. I started avoiding my own apartment, staying late at work, going to my friend Priya's place instead. Part 7. Priya doesn't believe me until she does. I told Priya everything one night over wine at Priya shrugged, uncomfortable, wrapping both hands around her wine glass like it could warm something, my secrets, my fears. And each time, the voice sounded a little more confident, a little more like I never repeat what it says. Never answer it directly, because answering is a kind of feeding too, May. Part 8. Trying to end it, I bought a hammer. That sounds almost funny now, writing it down. Go and I smashed the plastic casing until it cracked into a dozen pieces, until the thin brown tape spilled. Then I gathered every piece into a metal bucket, carried it out to my apartment's small concrete coup. I felt for the first time in weeks like I could breathe. I went home and took the longest shower.
Part 9. The voice doesn't need the tape anymore. I lay frozen in bed, listening. The static was FA, the little digital clock radio that came built into the appliance, the one I never used, the one I'm so close now, Sarah. I'm so close to being exactly what you need. Just a little more.
Just a lit. Soon there won't be a difference. Soon you won't want there to be. And Sarah, I don't need the tape. Part 10. Priya's phone. I didn't tell Priya about the microwave right away. I think some part of me, it was spreading outward, the way water finds every crack in a foundation, touching anyone close. I told her, carefully, in the most normal sounding way I could manage, that I'd found an old recordie for about 4 days. I let myself believe it completely, and those 4 days were the closest thing.
Part 11. What I found about Eleanor Voss. I went back to the library one more time, driven by some, I think it is old, patient, and it has done this before in other houses, wearing other mothers, off just a blank gray box where a name or number should be, glowing in the dark like something patient. I keep the phone in a drawer now, face down, the little red notification bubble sitting there in the